Don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. John Wooden. The number one concern I get from university students sounds something like this.
Yeah, Brendan, I can't be outspoken like you. Brendan, there's too many rules in my university presentation. Oh, if I speak like you, I'm gonna lose points.
And it's through these concerns that made me realize that most of us in university have trouble delivering exceptional presentations to people who need to hear them, regardless of the rules that our teachers set for us. And that's exactly why on this week's episode of Master Talk, I'm going to be teaching you how to deliver exceptionally well in any classroom setting you might be in. So let's get into it. Number one, build the right foundation so you can secure the maximum amount of points in your classroom. Let's face it, the goal here is to get the best possible grade. So now the question is, how do we do that? And how is it different from the way that I used to prepare for my presentations? So the way that I always think about it is preparing 2 to 3 weeks in advance is almost essential. And here's why. You want to spend the first week getting the draft together so that when you look at it multiple times during the time you have to prepare, you can present it 10, 15, 20 times. So when you get to the actual thing, it's always perfect. Versus the biggest mistake that other students make is they prepare for that thing 2 to 3 days in advance. Would you prepare for your wedding 2 to 3 days in advance? Probably not. You need to start applying the same amount of rigor to every university classroom and presentation you need to prepare for. That's why at the beginning of every semester, what I did as a student is I would rank all of the presentation and their dates, because generally teachers give you that well in advance. And then I would know exactly at what point I need to start practicing for my science presentation versus my history one, so that when I have 3 to 4 weeks to prepare for it, I always get it right. And that's the other piece, which is making sure you're getting feedback from your teammates and from everyone around you. But preparation is key, and preparing way in advance will put you ahead of your teacher's mind. Number 2, brainstorm creative ways to make your presentation a bit more interesting for your audiences. Now, let's go through the 4-week process. The first week you've spent really creating that draft and sharing it with the people around you and getting feedback. The next week, now that that's complete, is to ask yourself another question, which is, how can I use these same ideas that every other person in the class is going to present, but in a way that's a bit more compelling and a bit more interesting? And I know your first gut reaction is, well, Brendan, I can't really present like that. I'm in accounting. I'm in something not super interesting. But never forget also that I majored in accounting, and I did that in my accounting classes. We're literally going through tax policies, and we found ways of making it interesting. How? The way we did it is we always asked ourselves an important question. Why does this concept matter to the audience? So we would brainstorm ways over pizza to make these policies sound more interesting. So for instance, if you say something really boring, but then you say why it matters to the people who are listening, they go, oh, that makes sense. And the other piece of that is not presenting it like this. Here's my topic. Well, of course, you got to vary your vocal tones. You got to be a bit more excited when you present those same ideas. So always think about what are some innovative ways and feedback points that we can give to each other, so when the presentation actually happens, it's flawless and super interesting for every single person in the room. And finally, number 3, bulletproof your presentations with questions and repetition. This is the one thing that most students don't do, is they prepare their presentation, they practice it once or twice, and then that's it. Then they just wait until the actual thing, and then they present, which is not the right approach. What I used to do is week 1 of 4, we prepare the presentation. But then in week 2, we would gather a group of friends who were not very nice, and they would try and poke holes in the presentation by asking questions, by trying to interrupt us and saying, oh, Brandon, did you think of that? Oh, Brandon, what about this? What about that? So that way, what's happening is they're helping you think through any questions that the students or the teacher will ask you about your own presentation. So through that exercise, you can quickly bulletproof what you're saying so that when you get to the actual thing, there's not a question that you don't already have an answer to. This is otherwise known as question drills, where you drill through a presentation until there's absolutely no questions left on the table. So spend those extra 2 to 3 hours and drill your teammates on anything that could potentially come up as a question. And eventually what happens is the way that you think about your presentation start to change, and your resiliency when you present them also starts to change until you become an exceptional presenter where you can get asked any question about your topic and you'll be able to answer every single one of them. Remember, as John Wooden taught us, don't interfere with what you cannot do, but rather work with what you can do. Just because your teachers, your classmates, and your universities will give you rules to follow, things to do, boxes to check, doesn't mean you need to follow all of them line by line. Be creative. Think about ways to make your presentation stand out. Don't just follow the rules or you'll get the same grade as everyone else. But if you desire a better grade, a better outcome, I challenge you to think of more interesting ways with your teammates, with the people you care about, to make your presentations 10 times better than everyone else's. As always, if you enjoyed this week's episode of Master Talk, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well to see more videos like this. And if you know one person in university that needs help with their presentations, that wants to get better, send them this video so that they'll be one step closer to graduating. See you next time.